to positively impact
as many lives as possible
by providing the best
diagnostic tool
in functional medicine.
We take care of our people.
Staff, providers, and patients in that order.
We have a loyalty and dedication to our team and clients
that is genuine and should be evident.
We will be transparent.
We believe honest humility
should characterize the way we interact and communicate with our team
and the way we represent our product in the marketplace.
Everyone rolls with it.
The spirit of teamwork in our company
means everyone is willing to do any job, big or small.
50-yard line mentality.
To us,
there is no finish line.
We believe in our team and our product, and we strive to keep learning,
evolving, and refining everything we do.
Ultimately,
we are competing against ourselves
and the status quo.
So core value number one, what is it? We take care of our people. And I put in red there, I think the words that really are worth just spending a few minutes on talking about. The point of this, me sitting here talking about this, is not to convince all of you that we are taking good care of you so that you can, return to work and feel good about your employers. It's to hopefully, I hope you think that's true, but I hope to inspire you to continue to do even more of that. And there are other examples at that level of people taking care of their coworkers as well over time, when people have had death in the family or are, have an illness that's really been ongoing and challenging, or, issues with your kids or whatever. I think that is awesome to see, but it has to be all of us. And so I really feel like since the beginning, that's something that has really characterized the people that work here. So that's more of what a core value is. And it's something that should sort of describe your company. Care, our priority should be the well-being of whoever we're interacting with. And care, I think, in a lot of cases is just equivalent to effort. In talking about this unfortunate patient that's struggling with mental health issues or whatever, when that's the 12th person you talk to in that day, as a customer service person, or even just in receiving, like I got 450 samples today or whatever, like I don't have time to, deal with something that like doesn't have anything to do with us getting our job done per se. And it's those moments where I think we can make a real big difference in terms of really going, that extra step to care for people. Doing what's right must be responsible, but it doesn't have to pencil out in the short term. So obviously there are limits to this, right? We have to be responsible for the company. You're accountable to the people that you report to. And so we have conversations there and have expectations. So obviously there's not limitless things that we can do just in the effort of caring for people. But, it doesn't have to pencil out in the short term. And I think that's something that I've come to recognize just in the short history that we've had over these 8 years. And I think it makes sense to act as if the universe was built to reward benevolent behavior, which takes some faith. But for me personally, I think God's made this universe for us to tilt in the direction of benevolence. And if we do that, I think good things happen. And it was really encouraging to me to read this book by Adam Grant. It's not the best book in the world, but it's awesome on this topic because he takes an empirical, intellectual approach to this issue and looks at all these studies where they've taken people and sort of split them into groups, givers and takers. So then the other thing I've been trying to sort of wrap my head around when it comes to these values is what's the inverse, right? So the negative first power, right? So the inverse of our core value is not we don't take care of our people, right? Like nobody starts a company and says we don't care about anyone and we're not going to meet your needs or whatever. I think that's a little too simplistic. But what I do think is really contrary to that value is doing just enough. When we negotiate, I think it's really common for people to negotiate as if everything's a zero-sum game. To have a zero-sum game, that, if you're not familiar with that phrase, it just means to treat everything like like a sporting event. It's like if I win, you lose. And so to go into a negotiation, maybe with an employee and say, okay, we're going to pay you as little as we can. And if we get away with that, we win and you lose. Or to have somebody leverage themselves as much as they can and to feel like they've won and we've lost. And that's why I keep coming back to this partnership idea, that this is a partnership. If we're not all winning and moving forward with the decisions that we make together, then it doesn't end as well. And so I think to negotiate with vendors, to negotiate with our clients that are behind on their payments, all of that, not as if it's a zero-sum game of like one person's going to win and one person's going to lose. The more we can look for win-win situations, the better. So we've kind of beat this to death in terms of our people, our providers, and our patients. Thank you all for caring for our people. A core value is something that you're willing to be punished for in order to maintain, meaning there might be a sacrifice to our business at some point in order for us to maintain our values, and that's okay, because it creates sort of a true north place for us to all point and know what our expectations are. So transparency, what does it require? We already talked about it, but it requires valuing principle over expediency, and it definitely requires humility. And I think it's a huge thing to just get comfortable being wrong. Third, a commitment to integrity. Transparency is really, really necessary for integrity if that's the goal. But it's not required if perceived integrity is the goal. If we really want to have integrity as an anchor of our company and what we do, then we have to be willing to be transparent, even when it's difficult. For me personally, it's easier to keep accountable to the concept of integrity by keeping centered on a transcendent truth and a transcendent authority and accountability. And for me, that creates an external reason to try to keep aiming at that. But even if that's not the place where we center that concept, as a company, we want to keep ourselves accountable to that, to say that we want to have integrity, not just perceived integrity. And that's, I think, a really important distinction as we're trying to find our way in terms of what our values are and how we're going to behave. Now, there are some limits to transparency. So we don't expect everyone to necessarily bare their souls at every moment. There are limits to transparency. For us as a company, we try to share as much information as possible, but some of that even has limits. So transparency doesn't mean that everyone here needs to be entitled to every bit of information. So there are limits to transparency. Okay, a couple things on transparency that I think are important just to sort of talk about is part of being transparent that I think is challenging, where we have the option of being transparent, and I think we often hold short of that, is just complimenting people, like speaking positive truths to people. When you want to compliment somebody, be truthful, be positive, but also be specific. And then on the downside of it, right, is like, it would be nice if all the communication through this company was like all positive, right? But that's not all the things that we have to think about and things that we have to communicate. So I think I would encourage everyone to take a little extra step further than maybe where you're comfortable, that when something comes your way that's hurtful or offensive, and especially if you feel it leading to bitterness or resentment, like have a conversation with somebody, right? Like we're totally comfortable having really open and honest conversations about like, hey, I started just after this other person and that person has a promotion that I would like to have and I don't have. Like, you want to have a conversation about that? Like, our leaders are more than happy to sit down and say, this is the path you're on. This is the strengths that we see that you bring to the table. And we can have those types of conversations. And I think it's important that, again, if you feel bitterness or resentment sort of coming into the conversation in your own head, like, have a conversation about it and be willing to be transparent about that. If we allow pettiness to take root in our minds and in our hearts, it really is the enemy of purpose. The more we stew on things, either they're significant enough to go and communicate with someone about and try to resolve something, or at least have a common understanding, even if it's agree to disagree about the relative value or something, or whether we should be doing this or that or not doing this or that. But if it is in the category of something that's petty, I think it really gets in the way of doing what we need to do. So core value inverse, right? So each one of these we've been talking about, okay, what is it not? So I kind of put these in 3 layers. So if we're going about lying all the time, like that's going to be pretty hard to have a core value of transparency. So let's not do that. If someone asks you like, hey, how are you doing in your job? Are you struggling or whatever? And they are seeking information and you're blocked off and not willing to share, sometimes maybe you have to do that, but that's, a habit of that. I think it does not lead to healthy communication. So that's something that we like to avoid. The third level is difficult, and I think also takes a measure of professionalism and tact and wisdom and speaking in love, not just in truth. So I think that's the third level is being able to speak truth, even to a topic that you haven't been asked about. But and then to transition into focusing externally, right? That's up on the top there, really just referring to how we communicate with each other. What about for us as we communicate in the market? Because if you read our core value, it's not just about how we communicate to each other. It's about how we represent our testing. So saying whatever it takes to sell one more test one more time, like that is not how we want to approach sales. Hyping up the weaknesses of our competitors and covering over our own. There certainly is a place for us to highlight our competitive advantages. We want to do that and do that aggressively. But the norm in our industry that I've seen over the years is to take the things that your test doesn't do super well and just bury it so that people don't ask. But you know what they do instead is they experience it. So what does it mean to be transparent with our product? This is what thoughts came to my mind. Be honest. I will tell you that I have heard people in our company long ago telling people things in being transparent that aren't actually true of our testing. Like, oh, our test doesn't work in that particular situation. So in that case, they were being super honest. Good for them. Love that. But they weren't competent enough in that particular scenario to be representing us well. So we need to be honest for sure, but we also have to be competent. And I think if you're interacting with our clients, please don't get complacent in your understanding of just the nuances of when we should be testing, when we shouldn't be testing, how this particular thing, might impact a test. So the more we can understand those things, the better. So, and then to be wise, right? I think there are some situations where our complete transparency on an issue actually erodes the confidence of our clients more so than it should because of their lack of understanding, right? So we want to be honest, we want to be competent, and we want to be wise. And everyone rolls with it. So this is, again, the things that we discover about ourselves in terms of the way we behave. I think, this has been one that since day one, just the group of people that we have, the willingness to step up and do just whatever's in front of us. The most important thing is having the right people on the bus. And right now I'm talking to the bus, right? So we've got, I think, a terrific group of people. And then from there, getting the right people on the bus in the right seat. For those of you that are really new with us, the reason that we called it Everyone Rolls With It is, the most central thing that we do is roll the little pieces of dried urine and put them in the blocks and get them going. And pretty much everyone who works at this company has got a chance at doing that, with the exception of the last, COVID, right? We just haven't been able to do that, and which is really regrettable because it's a great way to just get to know people in the lab if you don't work in the lab, but also just to see what's at the center of what we do. And the process itself actually is reasonably sophisticated in that you can't just throw anyone in there to do it in terms of being in charge and keeping all of that straight. But the act of actually rolling the urine strip is not always the most glamorous thing. And so it's a good principle, I think, for us to set that hopefully we're all willing to do those little things, whether it's that or putting stickers on things in shipping, which is maybe one of the less glamorous things that they get to do amongst all the other things. And those are examples that I've seen over time of people just always being willing to do those things regardless of your title. I really don't like hierarchies. The more we can flatten the structure of our company is better for all of us. But we do need hierarchies for function, right? But they don't imply obviously worth or value or who should or shouldn't have to do a particular thing. Like we filter into our job titles and job duties because it's the best way that we as a group can succeed. So if you perceive something that you have to stoop down to do from the position that you're in, that's important. That we do that without any ego, without any airs. And sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's being willing to step up into something that we're somewhat uncomfortable with. And I know there are lots of you that have had to do that over time, where we're just, we're still a relatively small company. And, when things happen and we have to step up into those things, we do. And the thing is, we do. And that's why it's a core value, is that's something that I think is exemplified across this company and always has. And it's something that we want to make sure that we stay true to, and hire people that have that sort of vision for work. So what's the inverse for each one of these? We've been going through sort of the inverse. So what's the inverse and opposite of that sort of attitude is, everyone stay in their lane. So to reword it, the spirit of individualism and protectionism in our company means everyone's out for themselves. Like that's something that I hope that would never describe the work environment here. My place in the hierarchy tells me what I can do and what I must do. That sucks. I only do this, you just do that. Those types of attitudes are things that we really hope to avoid, and I think for the most part people do, which is awesome. Once we've established trust, I think then we can get down to the business of pursuing the company's mission. And I hope that we haven't beat on that so much that it raises like cynicism towards those issues. It really is, I think, important that the relationship between the organization and the individuals that are within it is really built on trust. And I hope that if you're new to our organization, that you'll take a little bit of a leap of faith in terms of trust, and see how that goes. But the other thing that I keep harping on that's so necessary for this to work is communication, because you can bet that somewhere along the way, we are going to fail in those core values, and we're going to fail to live up to the trust that we hope that you're putting in us, even though I hope our intentions are in the right direction. And when those things happen, it really is important for people to step up into that and have a conversation with people, because it helps us to straighten things out. And so often just miscommunication and misunderstanding can lead to a misalignment there. It really can be a point of inflection in terms of a relationship there. And so I hope people will step up into that and communicate. All right, that leads me into core value number 4. So once we've established trust, we get down to business of making better the things that we do, right? So I really like this. This is a little bit long on this one, but I really like almost every word in this. Like there's no finish line. We believe in our team, we believe in our product, and we strive to keep learning, evolving, and refining everything we do. Ultimately, we are competing against ourselves and the status quo. What does that mean? So to have a 50-yard line mentality, everything we do, really, that's the approach we want to take. Like anti-complacency about our product. If you look at our product, the things that we tested on day one and the things we test now, it's improved like really significantly. And we never want to get to the place where we stop pursuing things that can make it better. Our service, like the way we care for people, the way that our customer service and our doctors care for people, is an area where we're going to continue to have, just continual improvement. I think sales and shipping are ones that I reflect on a lot when it comes to this, because if you asked me to help in those areas, you would be sorely disappointed at how little I could do, because those processes have changed so much and evolved so much since I started. I always reflect back on shipping to where it actually wasn't that long ago that, let's see, the place where Anna sits was the shipping department that was about maybe twice as big, 3 times as big as the space she has there. And there was a whiteboard, and that was the shipping system, was grab a marker, write it on the whiteboard. When you send it out the door, cross it off or erase it or whatever. I don't know. It was like a complete and utter joke compared to what you guys have in shipping now, which has been just a continual improvement. Like none of that was really any big step. It's just continuing to get better day after day. And with the sales process, I always reflect on the 3-month period, maybe it was 2 months, I don't know, where the only thing we were doing with people that were pursuing a relationship with us is we would go to a conference and they would sign up or whatever. And then we were sending out these e-blasts. This was, I don't think anyone who works in sales and marketing was part of the team when this was true. So rest easy. Will, you were probably over in shipping. But we would send out an e-blast. Hey, we met you at the conference. Awesome. Come do business with us. And then the only way they could relate back to us was to follow the link and reply back to us. And the link was broken for like 2 or 3 months in this email that we were sending out. So if you wanted to work with us, like you better be ready to work hard because we're sort of running away from you as we're trying to pursue your business. And we had 0 phone calls. We made 0 phone calls to follow up with people at that point. So then little by little, we've improved it. And I think probably the biggest step in that is just getting people who are their area of expertise is that process itself. And I think Noah is to be really commended for how much he's contributed to that process itself in terms of going from, well, nothing, which is not hard to improve on, but, you know, moving that from a process that works to a process that really is to be envied, I think, in terms of how well we're handling those types of things. So shipping, sales, like all across the board, you know, we've improved so much, but the point here is not necessarily now to stop and celebrate that, although we should do that as well, but is to look forward to see, you know, how many of those changes we have coming out ahead of us. So our infrastructure, you know, our facilities, our IT, same thing. It's just been one steady stream of improvement, and we never ever want to lose sight of taking that approach. And that's been a fun part of watching the company grow. But it's also, I think we all have to be on notice that as the company grows, that's part of the humility and the flexibility that we need to have as some of those different skill sets become such that we need them at a higher level or in a full capacity instead of somebody's little side job. You know, that's just part of growing as a company. With each one of these, we've been looking at the inverse. So what's the inverse of the 50-yard line mentality? You know, punch the clock, do enough, go home, repeat. I think that type of mentality it's not uncommon in workplace, right? But it's not very purposeful. And so we hope to stay away from that as much as we can. Maintaining the status quo, stay caught up with the competition. I think that's one thing that we haven't done a ton of, is staring at our competition, seeing what they do, and then react. I think that is a losing proposition. You need to be aware of what people are doing, and we certainly are. And there are some viable competitors out there that are doing some new and really interesting things, and we want to be paying attention to those things. But you know, the approach we have always taken is do everything we can with exceptionalism